In this video, we'll look at the drawing question type. So we'll go ahead and select a drawing from our question type menu, and then we'll start looking at some of the options. However, this video is not really going to do this idea justice because there's so many different options for the drawing question type. So if we pull up in the writing questions help, and we open up the drawing section, and we expand this out, you see that there's a lot of content here. There's a ton of options, lots of documentation on this. And so to really understand all of it, I recommend just going in and kind of browsing through all of these options within the writing questions help. I'll just cover some basics. And so if we go to our question text, and we'll just enter something simple. I'm not even going to enter real text. We'll just do plot ... And when we quick save and preview, we've got our text, and then our actual answer box is now like a little graphing area, and our cursor turns into a pencil. We can start to do things like graphing stuff on this plane. So we have a handful of tools. We can clear everything. Like down here, we can select a dot if we want, plot some dots, or an open dot. There's like a ton of different tools you can use, and you actually get to determine which tools show up underneath the graphing area. So if we go into this, and we pulled open the writing questions help, then we see that the answer format variable controls what type of answer is expected from the student, which also controls what tools show up underneath that answer box. So we see a handful like 2 points, there's a polygon, inequality, number line, which is a nice one. You can do plotting on number lines. And then we have more information on things like if we use the 2 point option, then we have a whole other list of things we can do and add in there. So maybe we'll just look at an example of one of these. So we'll go ahead and type in answer format equals 2 point, line seg, and then ray. And when we save that, now we see that we have these tools down here. One of them is a line segment, one of them is a ray. So we can use the line segment tool. We could also use a ray tool. And then once the student plots these, they can drag their points around and so on. And then I think we could probably add something like dot to the end of this to have like a single dot or point. So there's a lot of ways to customize what kind of tools the student is able to use. So by default, these points are not like snapping to the grid. They're kind of free floating points. There's one option that's a very good option to set. It's recommended that you set it, and that is snap to grid. This variable, if we set this to say 0.5, now whenever we plot a point, that point is going to snap to the grid in 0.5 unit increments. So this is nice to kind of make things a little more rigid. It makes it a little easier for students to enter the answers that you want them to. We also can change the snap to grid to a string where we do like the X snapping as the first one, and then colon, and then maybe the Y snapping. So 0.5:1 should make it so that our points snap to 0.5 in the X direction, but snap in units of 1 in the Y direction. So we've got some flexibility there, and you should definitely set these to make it a little easier for students to enter answers. That way they're not getting frustrated when they're plotting something that's pretty darn close to what's supposed to be correct, but just not quite close enough. Now another nice option is the grid variable. If you go to the writing questions help, you'll see all the options here, but you can set like the grid for the answer area. So we could do something like -10 to 10, -10 to 10, and if we just set that, that should just change like our graphing window to go from -10 to 10 and -10 to 10. We've got some options there. So for example, there are some other things we might do. We can add some labels there. Maybe we want to make it so that we only have numbers every 2 units on our axes, things like this. You've got a lot of control over the actual grid that's showing up. And there's too many options there for me to cover right now. So go to the writing questions help and kind of look through there, but just know that the grid allows you to change like the spacing on the axes. Another useful one is rel tolerance. We've seen this variable before. The rel tolerance variable works a little bit different in the drawing context. if we did relative tolerance equals 2, what this means is the system's going to be twice as forgiving as normal. So students, it'll be a little more forgiving on students' answers. So this can be nice if you want to loosen up the tolerance a little bit, like you can double the tolerance or you could triple it and so on. And then, of course, we want to define the answers. So there's going to be an array variable called answers, and you'll have to set this. And the syntax of the answers variable is going to depend on the type of answer format that you're looking at. So go into the writing questions help and read through there. The way that you enter the answers is going to depend on like what type of answer you want. So like with points, you would just do the coordinates of the point separated by the comma. For function type stuff, you would enter like an expression in terms of x and so on. So go to the guide, take a look around there, and you can see a lot of the different options.